Welcome to Between the Poles, the podcast where we dive deep into the heart of the pole community. I'm your host, Caroline. Here, it's not just about the tricks and the spin, it's about the stories, the people, and the connection that make our community so special. Every episode, we sit down with pole artists, studio owners, and inspiring members of the community to talk about their journeys, challenges, and passions. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's get real. This is Between the Poles. Hi, Joellie. Thank you so much for being on Between the Pole. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. So for our viewers and our listeners, today on this week's episode, we are chit-chatting with Joellie, who owns the handle on Instagram, Pulling on the Plus Size. And then we'll get kind of chatting. I'm really excited to know a little bit more about you and your journey. I'm particularly interested for my own little person, and we'll get to it, of the why I started following you and why I'm so interested. The first question we always ask anybody on the podcast is, how did you get to pole? Like, how did this journey start? How many years ago? How did you find a pole studio? Kind of all those good.
It's such a long story. I'll try and condense it as much as I can. So basically, at the moment I'm 34 now. When I was about 20, in the college course that I was doing, there were girls that were interested in doing classes, and I was always a bit like, oh, I couldn't do that, not strong enough. And then one of the girls in there, she did like a 6-week course or something, and it looked so interesting. So I really wanted to give it a go. And then my friend got a home pole, and I had a little play on that, and I thought, this is impossible. There's absolutely no way I'm ever going to have any upper body strength to do this. But I don't know why. I just suddenly thought, you know what, I'm just going to book a 6-week course. So I just Googled local classes, and there was one in a town called Godalming, which was about 20-minute drive from me at the time. So I basically joined that as a beginner's 6-week course. So this was probably, gosh, I'm trying to think. Yeah, like 15 years ago or something like that. Quite a long time ago. So I did basically that. I stayed at that studio for 4.5 to 5 years, just working my way up, sort of beginners, intermediates. I was sort of getting up to the higher intermediates at that point, and then I got married and had children. And after I had kids, it was really difficult to get back into it. I found it really hard time-wise. I found it really difficult to get up and go. And also when they were little, it was kind of like, I don't really want to leave them. So I was didn't quite commit back to pole. And I did think at that point that pole was part of my previous life before kids, and I wasn't going to go back. And then I had 2 children over 5 years, and it got to a point where I thought, do you know what, I'm just going to go back and try again. And at this point I had gained quite a lot of weight. My relationship with food and exercise had been pretty bad before. Even when I was doing pole before, it was pretty bad. But I had gained a lot of weight, and I remember messaging my current instructor being like, am I too heavy to pole now? Like, do I need to lose weight? And she was like, absolutely not, come along. And that was, in fact, it was it 2 years ago? No, 3 years ago, like in a week or two, 3 years ago since I've rejoined. So I did have quite an extensive knowledge of pole before I had kids. When I came back, it was lucky that my brain still remembered basically what to do. It was just a case of working on the strength. So I don't really know why. I just liked the idea of it. It looked fun. So that was kind of it. And it's kind of been a long journey to get to where I am right now. Having that long break and then coming back and dealing with different body type and, all that sort of thing. So, yeah.
I do have a couple of questions on your story. So you said you registered for that 6-week course, and then you kind of kept on going after that. Were you pretty consistent before you had kids?
Yes, I didn't have children at the time. I was living pretty close, 20 minutes away, and I think I did a Monday evening. So for me, it was ideal because I was still studying at the time to become a teacher, primary teacher. So I basically would come home from university, have dinner, go to pole. I did it once a week for a long time. And I think by the time I'd done my 6-week course, I'd started to make friends. And obviously the community you get in a pole class kind of had begun. And yeah, I just carried on going. It was also social for me. So it was good to get out of the house. So yeah, I think I did once a week for quite a few years. I think I added in a second class a bit later on when I got a bit more, sort of intermediate. But yeah.
And then I guess that answers a little bit what I wanted to ask. I was going to ask before you had kids. So before you took that break, where were you about like level wise?
I think I was very solidly in the intermediate. There were things in intermediate I could do easily. There were things in intermediate that I was really scared about, so I didn't like it. I've never liked handstands. So moves like the iguana and things like that, where you have to be completely over your head, freak me out. So I basically was not great at any of those. But yeah, I was able to sort of transition quite a bit up the pole in inverts and things. So I was also a lot slimmer. So although I don't like to promote the fact that body size matters with pole, because it doesn't. There were things that were easier in a smaller body in pole. I'm not going to lie about that, but at the same time, now being bigger, it hasn't really affected anything. But yeah, I was kind of like intermediate level, basically, quite
Okay.
solidly. Yeah.
And then how long was the break when you had your kids? Because you said you had two kids and kind of a
Yeah,
5 year.
I mean, the break overall was about 5 years. However, I did try and go back to pole a couple of times in those 5 years, but I'd only do like 4 or 5 weeks and then it'd tail off because it wasn't working out. Or at one point I had to join a different pole class sort of because I moved, so I wasn't close to my old studio anymore. So I tried a class closer to me, and they didn't do classes over the summer holidays. So like after that break, I kind of just didn't go back. It was really difficult. It didn't. I don't know what the word is, but I think for any of us that are addicted to poles, you have that kind of feeling of, "Oh, I just can't wait to go to the next lesson." But at the time, I think I was really struggling with my body image. I was really struggling with being a mum, having two kids as well. I had one, and then I had 2 years break, and then I had another one. So trying to navigate life with kids was also weighing quite heavily. So it was quite hard to commit back to it. Um, I honestly don't know how I would have felt starting pole after having kids, but I think I'm just grateful that I did start before, because I think that's helped me want to go back to it, if you know what I mean.
And I see, like, I feel like our story have a lot of similarities and then
Yeah.
so different as well. I started pole, I was 6 months pregnant with my first one and
Mm.
been in a bigger body most of my life. I
Yeah.
was really unhealthy, and that's how I found pole. Like my doctor and my midwife, which is so funny to say, but they kept on pushing me to move more and
Yes. Find
wrap
something.
like preeclampsia and all that. So
Mm.
they really wanted me to move. And then I lived not far from a pole studio because at that point I was already going to the pool once a week, and then I would go for like walks every day. And they were like, no, you need to like start um having more weights and like
Yeah.
doing your body and all that. And that's how I find pole. And I feel the opposite that you feel. I feel really grateful that I didn't start before, because knowing me, starting and then having to take a break, I feel like maybe I wouldn't have come back.
It it just, as soon as I found it difficult in those in between moments, I remember getting to a point mentally where I thought, oh, do you know what? I just can't. I'm just not going to bother. And I just put it down. I wasn't even sad at the time. I think I just put it down as I'm in a different place now. I've got different priorities, and I just didn't think about it. And then I think the December before I rejoined in the January, 3 years ago, I just went, I used to really love pole. It used to be like, I really loved it. It was something I really enjoyed doing. Maybe I should, go back. And at the point, my youngest, who is 5 now, so he was 2. So he was kind of at an age where he was kind of not relying as much on me as, in the evenings and things. He was going to bed, and luckily that meant I could go and do classes. So I don't know, just clearly it wasn't the right time in between. It wasn't the right time for me to go back, and then all of a sudden it was the right time, and it just felt different, and it went from there, really.
You said that you love pole. What was it? Was it like the community? Was it the teachers? Was it the studio? Was it how pole makes you move? Like what of pole?
I do come from like a dance background. I was a dancing child. I did like ballet, tap and jazz from when I was about 6 to about 16. So I've always liked dance. And I before I found pole, I used to try like Zumba. We have club size over here, which is basically like dancing to like popular tracks with like disco lights and stuff.
Oh, okay.
For exercise clubs and stuff. And although I enjoyed those, there wasn't the same level of challenge in a way. I'm not sure what about pole specifically attracts me. I just found the feeling of doing it really sort of addictive in a way. So like, although there are obviously times when you go to a class and you can't get anything and you come away and you think, oh, I didn't get to manage to do anything today. There are classes that you go to and you think, I'm really going to get this. And then if you manage to get something, that feeling you get of when you actually achieve something is almost like what keeps me going. So I don't know. I find it really freeing. I find it really fun. I like the social aspect of it, as I said, like the community of the girls that I pole with, and or people that I pole with in general, that I've met over the last few years. Meeting new people, being able to almost share their journey. And my instructor, I absolutely love my instructor. She's so supportive, and I genuinely don't think that my return would have been as successful without her, because I think she was so open-minded in adapting things for me. I could do moves before, but now I couldn't because I now have extra tummy, and she was able to sort of change things and make them more achievable. So I think definitely having a good instructor is something that really helps anyone in a pole journey, really, or in wanting
I
to
would
continue.
really agree with that. When I started, like I said, I was in a different body and I was pretty unfit. I really don't have any like sports background or anything. And then I had a teacher who was really good being like, you know what, if this is your body type, let's lean into this. What would make
Yeah.
work for you? And different entries, different exits, even just sometimes concentrating on moves that she knew that would work well with my body, because we
Yeah.
all have limitations, right? And that's just being honest with ourselves.
Mhm.
But that teacher really did make a difference for me.
Yeah,
And
I think it definitely. I mean, I've spoken to friends who all over the country who go to pole, and some of them have been like, "Oh, I'm really not enjoying pole. I can't do any of the moves every week. I'm not being able to do it." And I always say to them, try a different instructor. You just don't. I mean, we don't all get on with everyone, and sometimes you just need that specific person for you. And twice now, friends have moved to a different instructor and come back and been like, so much better. Like, I feel so much better, and then they've been progressing. So I think, having that person, especially someone you can trust, I think, especially being in a bigger body, it's really scary, the thought of falling on your head. There are some moves that I try and do, and I think, oh, the load feels too heavy right now. And if I did fall, I'd probably really hurt myself. And having an instructor that you trust to spot you or put you into the right position or guide you into it is something that I think is really important when you're looking to start, especially.
yeah, absolutely. 100% with that. And then, yeah, I guess we all have that too. And I tried to tell my student as well, because some people are like, I really like how you teach. And then I'm like, okay, but still go to different instructors, because you'll be able to see, and we all teach different things because we're all human. So we all teach stuff that we enjoy, or that we like, or that we master. Go to somebody else so that you
Yeah.
can learn something else. You talked about moves that you didn't quite love, but is there any moves that naturally came easier?
I'm trying to think. Ones that came a bit spinning, as in I do static spins usually. Static is that kind of what I learned before. We didn't do very much spinny pre-kids. We did occasionally, but it wasn't. I know that in other countries, spinny pole is like that is what you learn, whereas we've always learned on static. And so like dancing, flowing, spins, and things like that, I've always found easy to pick up. Like choreo, I find that quite easy to pick up, and I really enjoy that. Tricks have always been a bit harder for me, even pre-kids. I think it's just the strength that you need for them that is hard. But there are definitely some moves that I really enjoy. I mean, I really like inverting, and I'm glad that it didn't take me a huge amount of time to regain it, though it has taken me quite a long time to regain it solidly enough to transition into something else. So I do like inverted moves, but yeah, it's kind of one of those love-hate relationships because it's just, I want to be able to do it, but it's not always easy to get into the position you need. So
And then I ask this to kind of everybody that comes on the podcast. How would you describe your style? Like if you are doing choreo, what do you naturally prefer kind of working in your choreos? If you are doing tricks, you kind of touched up on it. You say you do more static than spin and stuff like that. But what moves would you kind of practice? Like, yeah, how would you describe your
I think I suppose in a way it's kind of contemporary-ish, but I suppose I liken it more to like jazz, like I used to do when I was a child. I count in beats pretty naturally. Like I sometimes when I film my combos that I share on my social media, sometimes they're to music, sometimes they're not to music, but almost always when I put them to music, it looks like they've been put to music. And I kind of feel like my brain just naturally moves in counts of 8. So I think I don't really know what it's called. I suppose contemporary is kind of the closest style. I don't like anything too slow. I don't like anything too fast. I like to go with the beat of the music, whatever it is. I find sort of sexy dance really difficult. I find that really difficult for myself, but I love heels. So I don't know. I think I'm just like a blend of them all. I suppose I kind of like a bit of everything, but I like something that I can really get into, like put lots of spins and flows. I quite like floor work as well. So yeah, I don't know. I suppose it's kind of jazzy because I kind of just like to just, flow with the music and stuff. But
that's all right. And then I kind of also wanted to ask about body positivity because you're really open about it on your platform and we've touched up on it a little bit. But how do you feel like pole affected the way you see your body or the way you treat your body? And how do you feel like that kind of improve or not your body image of yourself?
pole on its own hasn't necessarily done that for me completely. It has helped, but it all sort of started just before I started pole because I decided after multiple failed diets, constantly, always feeling like I'm going to have to monitor what I eat for the rest of my life, like always feeling not satisfied with food. I was just getting to a headspace where I was just like, I cannot go on another diet. I'm going to end up having a breakdown about it, and struggling a lot with binge. Well, I was never diagnosed with binge eating, so I don't like to say I had binge eating disorder, but I did have binge tendencies that I used to have, especially since I started dieting probably in my sort of late teens. That developed, and I was getting to the point where that was too much. So I sort of decided one day that I was going to look up intuitive eating and all the body positivity surrounding that. And that kind of kick-started that journey. And then I think once I was a few months into that, I decided I'm going to try pole again. So I think actually that helped me to start pole again as well. And then when I came back to pole, it took me a really long time to be able to look at the videos of myself and not judge myself for how I looked. Or like body checking. Like I used to, pre-kids, I would always be like, I'm not sharing that. I can see my stomach roll. I can see this on my leg. I'm not sharing it. It's gross, And that used to be such a horrible thing I used to say about myself. But now I just don't have that inner monologue anymore. I don't look at myself on the pole and pick apart bits of my body. All I kind of see is like what I've achieved from it. I kind of look at the whole picture of, wow, I couldn't do that move 6 months ago. Now look, I'm doing it and I'm adding something else in. I kind of feel like pole has given me reasons to look at my body in other ways. I can look at my style, my strength, my ability to, my flexibility, my coordination. I think it looks at everything, and it doesn't just look at whether or not you've lost any weight from it. And sometimes I get lots of comments that say things like, "Oh, you look like you've toned up," and I'm a bit like, I don't know. Like I do not look at myself like that anymore. I don't notice if anything's changed as much anymore because I focus on the other things. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of like pole itself hasn't changed my outlook on body positivity, but it's helped and contributed to it. So
Yeah.
I think it just gives me other reasons to, celebrate other things rather than just what you look like.
Yeah. And then I know that your studio is not representative of every studio, right? Like every studio has their own kind of community and
Yeah.
all that. But how do you feel like other students or teachers wherever you do workshops or take class, how do you feel? I'm not even sure how to say it. Like, did you feel like people were super supportive and don't kind of put you in a category just by how you look?
Um, I think I'm really lucky in that every studio that I have been to since coming back, I've not had anything said to me. I've not felt like anybody's been commenting or any, like, I genuinely just feel like everybody sees the same thing in me that I see. And I think that's also like one of those things where a lot of people are really fixated on what they look like. And when their friends go, oh no, nobody notices that about you. It's 100% true. Nobody notices those insecurities. And I think I've just been really lucky that all of the different studios I've visited, because I've visited a fair amount in the last 3 years. There's quite a few local studios to me, so I often I have my main class, and then occasionally I'll just dot around and go to a different studio, or go somewhere else if like my teacher's off sick, or she was on holiday one time, so for 2 weeks I went to a different studio. And although I felt a little bit nervous going to a new teacher, I kind of feel like everybody there was just really friendly and accepting. And I think it also helped that the majority of classes I've been to and workshops I've been to, I'm not the only plus size person there. And I feel like it makes me happy because it makes me think that people are feeling confident and more plus size people are taking it up and going. So I kind of feel like I've just been really lucky, really. I haven't had any negative responses in class. Instagram is a very different place.
Well,
But
because I
yeah.
did a
But
whole.
in class, I've been really lucky. The communities are amazing. The teachers are amazing. And all of the teachers that I've been to since rejoining have all been very good at giving me options. If I can't do something, here, try this option. Or they've spotted me and helped me. And it's never been a case of, well, you can't do that one because, you can't get your bust around that bit. Or, it's never been a case of that. It's always been, oh, let's try this instead. So I think I've just been very lucky.
Yeah, I was gonna say I started following you and I've been super interested in what you post because when I started pole at the studio, I started pole at, I was the only heavier lady that was in my class, and I felt that was very discouraging. And then teachers vary, right? Instructors vary a lot. I feel sometimes I was kind of told, well, you just have to be more fit, right? But then when I took after that, like different studio, different instructors, people that used to be in a bigger body or that are in a bigger body, I felt always gave me really good options, different challenges, because they remembered what it felt like to struggle, right? Or just to have limitation. Me too, right? Like I started pole 6 months pregnant. I was like, I'm not bending forward in a cradle spin where my stomach is the thing that's
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not even going to attempt it. So I need something else. That's why I kind of find you so inspiring to put yourself out there and show that you can pull in any body because that's something that I'm really passionate about.
I
And then,
think, yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky that where I live, and obviously I live in England, which is not massive compared to other countries in the world, and, looking at, for example, the USA, there are, how many studios across the USA are there? And, there are people from the pole community that have commented negatively on my stuff. And I think there still are studios out there that are a bit judgmental or not open to being inclusive. I think every instructor I've met has been very inclusive, has tried to be very inclusive, or asked me, can you do that? What part are you struggling with? Let's see if we can try something else. And I really think it's down to the studio being inclusive. They need to make sure they are being inclusive for their students, their instructors making an effort to try and understand what their students are going through. My instructor, Jen, is just brilliant. Sometimes she'll say to me things like, we're going to do this, but I know that you struggle with this part. Is there any other parts that you struggle with or any bits that you think that I can change for you? She's really good with that. And I think that more instructors need to make sure they're doing that, because going to a pole class and being put off because someone's told you need to be more fit is just the absolute worst. I just feel like, no, there's no place for that in 2025 or 2024, but, there's no place for it. It should be for everybody. Anyone who wants to give it a try should be able to. yeah, I just think it makes me sad to hear that someone even said that to you. To be honest, it makes me really sad. So, you know.
Yeah. And then I kind of, because now I'm a pole studio owner and I try to really advocate for that as well while I'm just talking to people, trying to get them into the studio. I'm like, you don't have to be fit to start. No barriers to entry. Anybody, there's so much variation and there's so many options that
Hmm.
and I'm really trying to get that point across. And then it kind of goes with the question I wanted to ask. And you said, like, yeah, in the USA, there's way more studios. Do you feel that in the pool community, there is enough representation of different body types?
No, I don't think so. And I think partly it's down to the fear of what other people are going to say. When I first started back, I didn't start my Instagram page straight away. At first, I just went on Instagram and was trying to find plus size dancers because at the time I was still a little bit like, oh, how do I feel? I remember that first class back, I did feel self-conscious, partially because I felt like, am I going to be able to do anything? Partially because the other girls were a lot slimmer than me. But very quickly, that class became very understanding and it was very clear that everybody feels quite, you know, body neutral. Nobody's looking at you going, oh, that's gross, or which is what you fear when you're in a bigger body. You go into a class and you think, oh, I don't want people to think that about me. And I think that's the problem online as well, because you have got some pole dancers who are there. I'm trying to think of who. I think Ros the Diva was the first pole account that I followed when I started back at pole. And I really liked that. Obviously, she was also doing sort of workshops for instructors on how to accommodate. So that was a really good one to start following straight away. And I was just struggling. I was trying to find people. I probably found maybe 3 or 4 that I could follow, and then obviously I followed people that lots of people follow because you look at their routines and stuff, and you think that is amazing. And I just remember thinking, I'm just going to start sharing it because. And I did say to myself, shall I keep it private or shall I just share it publicly? And I thought, do you know what? There isn't enough representation. People are too scared to share it. And I've had that from a lot of followers who've messaged me saying, I really appreciate you sharing your journey. I'm too scared to post it because I don't want the horrible comments and things like that. And I think the only way really to fight that is to keep showing up for it. Really, is that the reason people think it's not for plus size people is because not enough plus size people are sharing it and showing it is. So yeah, I don't think there is enough representation. I think everybody who is proud of their journey should feel they can share it without feeling like they're gonna get harassed, basically.
And then I do really agree with you. And I feel that this in 2024 was the first year because, like I said, like I teach a lot of classes now. I have a lot of students, and I keep telling, especially my beginners, like, this is not how it looked when I started. You don't even have to try to change your body, right? Things happen in my own personal life, and then I am in a new body now. But I, for the first time this year, shared videos of how I looked when I started and the level of fitness I had when I started. And I shared it and I was so nervous. And I wrote it on that story as well. I was like, please don't comment. Like, I don't want, I was like, so nerve-wracking to me to show how vulnerable. And I think comes from a place as well. I remember how I felt about my own body back then. And I wish I was way more happy about it. Like that I would celebrate the achievements I was doing. And because I have those videos and I'm wearing a long sleeve with long leggings. And I'm like, yeah, I was so self-conscious. I was like, people don't want to look my way. Please don't look at me. Like, I can't wear shorts. I can't wear a tank top. I'm definitely never going to pull in just a sports. I was like, oh my God, poor other students in the class that would have, right? And I'm like, why was I so harsh on myself? And I remember exactly what you said when I started as well, going online. And this was a couple of years ago, trying to find people that look like me back then. And I didn't know a lot about pole, right? I was just starting off and could find almost nothing. So then kind of that concept arose in my head of like, well, I'm not going to post unless I look like how everybody else is looking. And I wish I would have took your stance and be like, none of us posed and there's nothing out there for people to look.
I mean, when I first started years and years and years ago, in my early 20s, I was probably a size 14, UK 14. I don't know what that equates to you guys where you are, but that for me was big at the time. I mean, as I said, I have a bit of a warped relationship with my body from the past, but at the time I thought I was massive. I thought everyone around me is like a size 8 to 10. They're all doing it. They're all stronger than me. I do remember those feelings, and I think, you know, that is part of my journey still. Like, I did have those feelings, and when I came back I had to sort of change that narrative for myself, because I thought, just I need to change how I see things, and that was also part of my body transformation. But I did think, looking online, like, there's not enough people just showing that they do it. I mean, I luckily now I follow so many people who are plus size. Sadly, all their accounts are quite small. You know, Instagram hasn't picked them up on the algorithm. I tend to share some in my stories sometimes. But there isn't. And I think it's really important that we see people that we resonate with. And also, a lot of the time I get comments with people saying, oh, I really appreciate that you show the learning side, not just the polished tricks. And for me, there's rarely ever a polished trick. It's always me just doing my best. But there's not enough accounts out there of students sharing their progress journeys. There's lots and lots of instructors. There's lots of elite doing amazing tricks, like they're hanging on by a toe, you know. They're amazing, but they're also not always relatable for students, especially beginners, because when you're a beginner and you look at those moves and you think, I am never going to be able to do that. Whereas on my first class, I remembered, we did step rounds. So we did like a step round with a leg hook, just standing. And I think we tried a front hook and a back hook. And I could barely even do a step round. I couldn't do that. I tried my best. I went home and I ached. You know, everything was sore, everything was hurting. And I thought, am I ever going to be able to do this? I think people always look at pole dancers and think that they automatically just got on a pole and it was easy, but it's not. And I think sharing an account in a plus size body of a realistic learning journey is kind of important for me as well, because I think people need to see that there are struggles, and that those struggles shouldn't put you off. It's part of what, you know, it's part of pole and part of the whole, you know, everyone's journey is going to have struggles. It's just we're all different and they might be different from each other.
And see, I'm smiling because as you're saying that, I was like, you know what? My first class, that's also what we did.
Yeah.
Struggled is the word I would use for my around. And I could not, for the life of me, get the front hook on spin. Like just any spin. Even if the pole was on static, there was no way. So then I would just slide to my knees. And my kneecaps were bruised because I could not lift my body weight. So I would just kind of smash down really aggressively.
I remember trying to do the back hook and nearly falling flat on my back, because I was just like, oh, and you think I've got to glide gracefully down, but actually you're just holding on for dear life, hoping not to fall off.
And I think the misconception is that only fit people start pole and they have like a gymnastic background or a cheerleading background.
I mean, some do.
Handspring first go. And I'm like, that was not my story.
And there are some people who start pole who are super strong. They've already got really good core. They've got really good arm strength. They can do all these tricks, but they might struggle with the flow and the choreo and retaining choreograph and not being able to, you know, follow steps or not being able to transition nicely. And then there are some of us who like that part and find that a bit easier, you know. And I just think pole is not one size fits all. And that's kind of what when I started sharing my account, I was just like, I just want to show you don't have to fit those standards that everyone thinks. You don't have to be able to do millions of tricks up the pole or an Iron X on spinny mode, and you don't even have to be able to, you know, do a 2-minute routine flawlessly and have a really slim body to be able to do this. You just need to want to do it, and that's, as long as you want to do it, that's all that you need to go to a class, and that's it.
And I'm not sure if this trend was big in the UK because I'm from Canada. I think last year, the year before that, there was this trend was see a fail, post a fail or whatever. And I loved it because then for the first time, a lot of elite polers showed tricks that they tried.
Yeah.
That completely did not go how they couldn't. And I was like, oh, okay. You can also reach the top and really struggle with some aspect of pole. So you're absolutely right. There's so much diversity in pole between tricks and choreos and flexibility and
Mm.
mobility,
Yeah.
transit, right? Like it's amazing sometimes to see those kind of people we look up to struggle.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
everybody's human. We all have things that naturally come to us and other things that we're like, I'm going to have to put in the work because this is not working out.
Yeah, and do you know there are some things like, for example, doing a chopper straddle, an invert straddle, is part of like the early intermediates, and like in the UK generally, most classes that I've ever been to over my entire pole time, that's something you get taught in early intermediates. And I think it took me 4.5 years to get one in my first round of pole, and I am so far away from it right now. It's not even on the horizon of being able to do a chopper, which is supposed to be an entry level inversion. And I think that people just need to come away from, you should be able to do this in this order. Once you get here, you're an intermediate. Once you're here, you're elite. Some elite people. I know instructors who struggle to do Superman. It's kind of like we all have struggles, and we're always gonna try and compare ourselves to someone, and we kind of have to take that step back and think, actually, I might be better at doing this than someone else is. So you've just got to really
I
look.
am loving this conversation because once again, the chopper straddle, I really struggled. I was doing crazy stuff and still could not do a proper chopper. One, it's a lot on the lower abs. I
Mm,
also have 2 children. I had 2 C-section. There was a lot of weight that was on my lower half trying to get that up. But I was like, if
it's so hard.
somebody told me like, oh, as long as you don't have that, you can't move on to intermediate. And I would have never moved on to intermediate. And there's other things that I was like, I'm loving this. I really love bracket moves. And I
Mm,
pull like so many bracket moves things before I even ever got a chopper. And that's just kind of what I want people to know. And I maybe people that didn't struggle, that didn't have certain limitations to know, like, listen, pole is not linear, right? You can be really good at a bunch of stuff and then really struggle with something else, and that's fine and that's okay. And I want students to know that. And I want
yeah.
people like thinking about starting pole to know that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's things like I just really struggle with anything where it involves a tuck. Pelvic tucks and holding is really difficult. I really struggle with the cradle spin. I cannot hold that pose. I can't hold the Jamila pose. I just cannot keep myself tucked in that position. When I'm doing the genie up the pole, I cannot let go of my top hand, because as soon as I need to use those lower abs to keep me in place, they are just not there to they're not listening. So we all have things that we're struggling with, and that doesn't mean that you need to stop, or it doesn't mean you need to only work on those things, because that's just going to get so boring. Just thinking, I can't do chopper. I'm just going to practice chopper nonstop until I can do it. Guarantee you'd probably want to quit by the end of the week. I think again it comes back to always sort of comparing yourself to other people and what you should be doing, what you think you should be doing. But actually, we're all individuals. We've all got individual journeys, and we're all going to find things that suit us better than other things.
Yeah, and then I kind of want to circle back to something you said that kind of feeds into this too. You said that you got negative comments out of the pole community. Can you touch up a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a huge amount from the pole community. I've had a few, and they tend to be from very thin women who clearly, I think, obviously have body issues themselves, or they wouldn't really feel that I'm a trigger to them to even need to comment. But sometimes it's things like, oh, you've barely made any progress in a year, for example. I had one which was just like, you've barely made any progress in a year. I'm going to unfollow you because you barely made any progress. And, I really think you should be losing weight because that would really help you. And it was kind of like, I don't think they were being like, they weren't attacking me directly, but what they were saying is quite harmful for people. I am going to take a lot longer to be able to get certain moves, especially if I have to hold my weight above my head with just my arms. I weigh more than you do. So, yeah, it's going to take a while. And my progress is really not anyone else's business but my own. So, I have had a comment like that. I've had comments from typically from countries like Russia, Ukraine, and sort of surrounding countries. I think that they have such a stricter view on what pole should be like. I don't want to generalize too much, but based on the languages I've had to translate from on Instagram, those sorts of areas tend to be quite. I've had comments from them. Obviously, not everybody's like that, but I've had comments from people that I've had to translate from Russian and things, and they are always very much like, they insult your weight instantly. That is just, you are not slim, so therefore going to put you down. But I think that's just the standard that's put on them, to be honest. But yeah, but I think I've only had a handful of poll comments. I mean, the rest is just a variety of different type of people, but yeah.
See, one, I hate that comment for like multiple reasons, but I also feel like that's unfair because only judging your progress on tricks, I'm like, listen, we can't all always be chasing the next big thing. It is more than all right to be like, in the season of my life, I want to work on my transitions. I want to new entries. I want to, you know what, just feel good when I pull. So I'm going to take a step back, work on what I already have, feel good. And that, I'm like, it's so unattainable to always be chasing the next big thing and then just seeing like, oh, I didn't hit a new big trick this year, so therefore I have made no progress. I'm like,
I mean, some of the things that I feel that I've done this year, which I have been working on for a long time, is things like climbing without a flexed foot. Like, I've started doing that more often. Like, that's progress for me. Like, do you know what I mean? That's such a small thing for some people, but that's a big thing for me. And like, the other day I posted a video doing a cross knee layback, and it wasn't even the layback part that I felt like I'd progressed in. It was purely holding, releasing my legs and sitting on the pole without dropping down a bit. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I actually held and I was able to let go of my legs and put them on without dropping down a little bit. And that was the small part of that entire trick that I was like, oh yay, I managed to do that. Like, I managed to do the layback as well, but I was kind of like, no, that's actually really good progress for me because I hadn't sort of thought about it for a while. And then I suddenly thought, I remember that was something I struggled with like last year. So I think, when people are focusing on you've not made any progress, it's kind of like, you don't know the kind of progress I'm tracking here. Like, maybe I feel clunky and uncoordinated when I'm doing flows, but now I feel really confident and happy when I'm doing them. That is progress. And that's not always something you can see. It's sometimes how you feel inside about it. So, I just don't think anyone has the right to put a label on your progress and tell you how it is without your consent, basically.
absolutely. And then also like social media, right? Like, you're tracking your every single like training session and stuff. I'm like, you're getting this comment out of such a limited amount as well,
I
right?
know.
And like, for viewers and like our listeners, right? Let's say I have really weak mobility in my shoulder cuffs. I was not able to like reach the pole if I start an iguana from the floor. So I can lay back to an iguana, but could not even reach the pole with my hands if I tried to deadlift into it.
Yeah.
I've put so much time and flexibility and mobility this year. I still don't deadlift to my iguana, but I can reach the pole with my hands.
Exactly.
And that was a massive victory for me. So I can't even imagine somebody be like, you can't deadlift iguana. You didn't know progress. I was like 6 inches away from the pole when I started. Do you know the amount of work?
And some of the, I mean, this is probably more like a couple of years ago when my account started getting bigger. I remember so many people were furious that I kick up into an invert. I know that that's one of those things that some studios are like, absolutely no, you deadlift it, you tuck and you go, you do not kick, you do not swing. But what looks like me kicking is actually me swinging quite controlled. So I used to get people going, oh, you're going to break a toe, you're going to do this. And I'm thinking, I literally don't think there's any way I could literally kick the pole in it looks like I could, but the way my body feels when I'm doing that motion, I know exactly how high to kick up to get to the pole. And like, I know myself when I'm going through that move, I swing my leg up to the height that I know because I've done it so many times. I hook my ankle on and then I know I can get up. It's not about me kicking into it and hoping for the best and smacking my foot. Like, people just assume you're going to get injured doing things when they don't know how your body feels when you're doing it. So I did have a lot of comments about that at the beginning, which was always like, you don't swing into an invert. I'm like, well, I'll never be inverting then because I can't chop her. So
That's what I would tell people as well, right?
yeah,
Because when I started inverting, now I had like a fresh new baby, a fresh new C-section. I was like, I'm controlled in my upper body. Like my lats are really, if I cannot kick to it, there's no way I'm able right now to engage. I can't even feel my two lower abs right now.
yeah,
And then telling me, then do not invert, I would have gotten so discouraged. Let me kick in this a little bit and then I'll work on it. But yeah, that's also something I find really limiting. And then please do not come for me in the comments. I get it. I get it. Slow and control. Great. Amazing.
this always
Please.
causes such a debate. And
I
obviously, I'm
know.
not an instructor. I am not an instructor, but I do trust my instructors. And every studio I have been to, they will allow controlled kicking into it. And it's not that you're just ramming your leg up and hoping for the best. It is, you're trying to get your leg to the pole so that you then have an anchor point to get yourself up. It's not a case of swinging uncontrolled and hoping for it. Yeah, this topic always gets really hot. I haven't had any comments about it, maybe because it looks a bit more controlled now in my videos, but I used to get a lot of that of don't kick up. I mean, I also know that some of my followers don't invert that way at all. They climb right up to the top. They'll do a bit like, they'll get into like a jasmine position. I don't know. They all have different names. Like where you hook your leg and put the other one behind and then drop into an invert. Like they'll drop into like a leg hang, which is another way, you know.
Teach people how to invert. I show those two options.
Yeah.
One showed me the jasmine option. So climb up, jasmine down. I saw that probably like 2 years ago and I was like, oh, I probably try that. But no one had taught me that. Way easier if you're struggling to like full tuck and then go,
Yeah.
right? So I always love showing that. So
I still can't do that. I still cannot drop down from it to it.
I find dropping down easier because you don't have to lift as much body weight.
Yeah.
And you don't have to tuck. I really struggle with the tuck of my abs. Being down, I just felt naturally kind of fit my body or also my mentality, right? Because people forget that pole is also a mental aspect. We are holding on with not fun things. And I'm like, I don't want to die. And I felt like I had that. But sometimes going up to it, I was like, oh, this.
So for me, it's actually mentally trying to go from a jasmine down is mentally too scary for me. I think because you have to shift the pole into your hip where it's on your thigh, you have to then shift it onto your hip. I just cannot make that movement without my brain going, you're going to fall off. So like, you know, I don't know. I've tried it a few times. I've managed to do it once spotted, but I just felt I had no idea what to do with my body next. So it's not my go-to, but I'm quite happy and comfortable with my way of inverting. I feel confident I'm not going to injure myself.
See, like so many roads you will like, and other people will like different things, and that's all right.
Exactly.
And then you kind of addressed it a little bit, but let's say when you do get those negative comments online, how do you address that? How do you go about it?
I go into different modes. It really depends how I feel at the time. Sometimes I just do not have the patience and I think I just cannot. I just ignore them. They don't matter to me. Like 10 years ago, they would have absolutely devastated me. But I feel like coming into my 30s, doing a lot of self-work around my body image and, you know, retraining how to like listen to my body with food signals and movement. And I kind of just feel like I don't know you. You don't impact me in any way. So what you're saying doesn't really matter. Like, actually, to be honest, even if like a friend came to me and said something, I would just justify whatever I thought and move on. Like, I don't know. I kind of just decide what mood I'm in. Sometimes I just ignore them. Sometimes I delete. If I'm in a bit of a mood where I'm not having the best time, I'm a bit, you know, we all have those moments where you're just having a day where you're just like, oh, I will delete them because I cannot be bothered. Sometimes I argue with them just because I just think, I just lose it a bit and I think, do you know, I just cannot believe you go online, you see something you don't like and you feel the need to be so horrible to someone you don't know. Like that really baffles me because I'm just not that person. Even if I think something, I wouldn't say it. I was raised, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. It's, you know, is it constructive to you? Is it constructive to me? no. So don't bother saying it. So sometimes I argue. Sometimes if I'm feeling particularly like cheerful, I'll sort of get into a bit of a, don't know what the word is, like I'll almost like have banter with them. Like I'll come back and I'll say silly things back.
Or
What's that?
I said I was gonna say the same. I was like, I feel like sometimes you troll them, which I feel with
Yes.
the same
It
expression as
really depends like on what they've said, what I feel like at the time. Sometimes I troll them back. Sometimes my followers join in, especially if I share it to my stories. They might join in with it. There have been a few over the years. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, but there are sometimes. Sometimes I don't even reply. It's something I've been doing recently just because it amuses me. I will go onto their profile and find a picture of their face, and then I'll screenshot it and zoom in really close, and then I share what they've said onto my stories with it. Because most of the time, and I'm not hating anybody, any women out there with lots of cats, but it is almost, or dogs actually, it's usually women in their sort of, I'd say 40 to 60s with lots of dogs and lots of cats. That's who it's usually. So I go onto their profile, see millions of cats or dogs, and then I get their screenshot, I put it on my stories, and I just think, if you feel like you can sit behind your screen and say something like that to someone, you deserve to be seen and your comment obviously shown. So I don't know, it kind of just depends on my mood. So I
sure.
don't really know. There's not really a straight answer to how I deal with it. I just depends on how I feel. If I don't feel like I can cope with it, I just delete them. Sometimes if I'm really agitated or like something stressful is going on and I think I'm going to argue with them and I know it's not going to make me feel good at the end of it, I will delete the comment because I know replying to them and arguing with them won't make me feel better. So I just delete it. Yeah.
And then I kind of want to finish the last big question on something a little more positive. I feel you did a really good job into kind of, I don't know, bringing positivity to your journey. And I wanted to touch up on you pull, but you're also a seamstress. And then can
I
you tell
I
us a
have
little
many
bit
hats.
about that?
So yeah, so I basically, pole is just my hobby. It's just my 1 to 2 day a week hobby, which I just really enjoy. I'm a part-time seamstress. I work from home. I run 2 businesses. So I have a children's wear brand that I've been running now for 5 years today. 5 years
What?
today is my birthday for my children's wear brand. And this time last year, I also set up a pole wear brand, sort of size inclusive pole wear brand called Foxfire Activewear. So I basically was making my own activewear because I've been sewing for children's wear and stuff. I was like, oh, I'm just going to make myself some sets because I can never find stuff online that I want, or it's too high cut, or it doesn't quite fit how I want it to. And vast majority of the time you will buy a size XXL and it will come and it will fit like a medium. So, so I started making myself stuff. And then a couple of followers just said, oh, would you make me a set? And it kind of went from there, really. So I've been running Foxfire for a year now. So there's lots of bits over on the Instagram page for that. So I do that. I'm also a teacher, so I part-time teach as well.
Really busy.
I am a really busy person. I'm one of those people that doesn't do well when I have nothing to do. So I like to keep busy.
And then for your active brand, do you do any size?
I use patterns that I have sourced and trialed and things. It goes from extra, extra small and all the way up to 6XL or 7XL, depending on what style it is and depending on whether the pattern I use goes up to that. But a lot of the time, somebody will say to me, for example, like, oh, your top only goes to a 6XL, but I need a 7. Can I give you my measurements? And then I do my best to basically make it fit. So, yeah, I mean, it's still, activewear sewing is still a little bit new for me. I feel fairly confident in it, but there are some times where customers might say to me, oh, this bit is slightly too loose, and I'll say, send it back, I'll make it smaller. It's a lot. Sewing for children and sewing for adults is a totally different thing because adults have such different proportions to children are one size, they fit that size or they don't fit that size, whereas adults kind of be like, I am like a size large, but I've got like an extra large waist, or so I'm quite open to sort of sewing things like, you might say I have a really big bust but I've got quite a slim waist, so I can kind of accommodate that as well. But But yeah, it's still fairly new, but it's something I feel pretty good about. So
All right. And then I will put it in the caption so people can give your brand a follow as well.
thank you.
And then I'm ready to finish this podcast episode. And we always finish with what we call the last grip. These are a little more fun questions that don't require as much detail. You can
Yes,
give as much or as little as you want. But are you ready for the last grip?
I am. I had a little preview of these, and a lot of them I was like, both. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do with this.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Favorite song to dance to right now?
At the moment, anything from the Wicked soundtrack. Because I've been listening to it for weeks. I know all the words.
I guess you have seen the movie.
I've seen the movie 3 times. And I've seen the stage show 3 times, so I am a
Right.
Wicked fan.
I had never watched Wicked, never seen the play, and then I went to see the movie. I am obsessed, so I
It's
get
so
it.
good. So good. But yeah, any of those, really, I just love them.
Heels or barefoot?
It totally depends. I love both completely separately. It
It's
depends
me
on
to
what
ask
style I'm
people to choose,
dancing.
isn't it?
Sorry?
I said it's me to ask people to choose, isn't it?
Oh, it is, because it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing tricks, I don't want to do it in heels. If I'm dancing, I'll do it in heels. So it's kind of like, depends what it is.
Can you give me one word to describe your relationship with pole?
Freeing?
All right.
Makes me feel quite
Understand
free,
it.
I suppose. Like, I just feel like I can go to pole class and just be myself without worrying about anything else outside of the room. Just leave all of those things outside.
Yep. Spin or static?
Static. Spin, I want to get better at, but I'm not very good at it, and it makes me feel quite sick.
Choreo or tricks?
Oh, choreo, definitely.
Morning practice or evening practice?
Oh, I don't know, because I'm stronger in the morning, but sometimes I quite like doing it after I've done stuff in the day. So it's kind of like, I'm stronger in the morning, but I do enjoy going in the evening because it kind of brings me down for the rest of the night, if you know what I mean. I can kind of chill after that.
Most love pole outfit or accessories?
Well, obviously my Foxfire outfits are my favourite. They fit me the best. But I have to say my heels are my favourite accessory because I have a big love for them at the moment.
Love or hate conditioning?
Hate, definitely. Anything too repetitive I find really hard to stick with.
Fair enough. Can you tell us 2 or 3 of your favorite polers to follow online?
Let me just get them up. I've obviously mentioned Roz the Diva before. I think her handle is Roz the Diva. Let me just double check. Yeah, it's just Roz the Diva. She's amazing. She's plus size. She teaches people how to be inclusive, which is good. Obviously, my instructor, Jen, her handle is jen.mcgrathpole_. She is just, I would not have been able to get as far as I could without her. The other one is really hard because there are so many people. But somebody I have been following for a while who also helps with my my brand. She helps to do videos and stuff for me. Is Nina. She is Nina Polarina. She's an instructor, but she's so strong. And every time I watch any of her videos, I feel like I just aspire to do that. So she's somebody that I started following, and I just thought, I don't know how your account's not bigger because you just are so strong. Her flow is amazing. Her tricks are amazing. And I just really, really love watching her flow. But there are so many people I could mention in this. I just don't have the time.
That's why I have the podcast, right? I want us to all be able to follow new accounts. No, I also think the same thing. I was chit-chatting with another guest, and I was like, I don't know how your account is not just massive with the amount of stuff you do, and you guys will see. Thank you. What is your nemesis move?
Chopper. It's always going to be the chopper. It always is.
And favorite move?
At the moment, my butterfly, because I've recently regained it, so I'm really happy with it. So I really want to keep going with that so I can then get it onto extended eventually. But yeah, that's my favourite one to do at the moment.
I love that. And then to close this episode off, can you tell us how can we support you? Where can we follow you? How can we...
I mean, Instagram, I just have my account on there. I don't monetize anything. I did recently set up a buy me a coffee thing, but that was purely just because I thought sometimes some people say, can we support you in any way? And I'm just like, not really. I just do this as a hobby and share it. And obviously, if you need some pole clothes, then head over to my my page. Unfortunately, I can't ship to the EU at the moment because there's a new law that's just come out, meaning that I, as a small business, cannot afford to jump all the hoops to sell in the EU at the moment. But I do sell to Canada, US, Australia, So if anyone wants to take a little look and likes anything, then I'll be happy to make you something.
And then we will put all the information for you in the captions on our YouTube and our Spotify. So make sure you give Pole on the Plus Size a follow and her brand as well. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Poles. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Stay connected with us on social media, and we'll see you next time right here, Between the Poles.